said, how do I become a pagan? Very, very interesting. For me, I always say that the goddess calls you back to her altar if you've been there before. So for me, it was like a coming home. It was Scott Cunningham that did it for me. I was going through the bookstore. I found a book on Wicca called Wicca for the Solitary Practitioner. I read by the third chapter into that book. I was like, this is exactly what I feel. So that was the first step of me converting from Catholicism to paganism. Yes, I was raised a Catholic. And it was very difficult to convert. For quite a while there, I was what now I know as a Christo-pagan. My altar had a picture of Jesus and a picture of Mary. I was still afraid I was going to go to the Christian hell. So to play it safe, I still kept Jesus and Mary around. And don't get me wrong, they're always going to be a part of my heart and they'll always be a part of my practice. And I will pray to them on occasion, depending. But I have been able to step away from that fear of going to hell for praying to Isis or talking to Isis or talking to Pan or talking to Cernunnos or Dionysus. And boy, did we have a lot of Dionysus in the 80s and 90s. Wink, wink. Anyway, so how do you become pagan? Paganism, it doesn't just happen. And actually, a great way to explain that is what I wanted to talk about earlier about initiation. Yes, of course, it is great to find a group of like-minded people who you can study with. Yes, it's great to find a public ritual. I mean, I do public ceremonies several times a year here. The public is invited. If you're ever in Roanoke, I'm doing one on March 22nd in downtown Roanoke. But yeah, it's great to get to know people. It's great to find a teacher if you can find one. And it's great to go through an initiatory process. I believe in self-initiation, but I also believe in the process of covenant initiation and tradition initiation. But let me clarify something about that. Just because you, for example, let's say you're my student, and I haven't done an initiation in probably about a year now, but I've got a couple of students who I've given their second degree initiation to in the last year. But just because they've done all the assignments, just because you do all the assignments, let's say your teacher says, okay, you got to do this, this, and this to get your first degree, and then they do this big fabulous ceremony and give you your cord and your robe and your atame and all that stuff, and put their hands on you and bless you and give you the five-pointed kiss or whatnot. That doesn't mean your first degree. That means that you have completed the structural assignments to do that. For me, the real initiation happens spiritually. It happens within you. And I remember going through my initiations. I would go through the formal ceremony. I'd do all the lessons. I had to write research paper after research paper. And yes, if you're ever my student, you have to write research papers. I make them write essays a lot, and they don't like it, but you have to write a lot of essays. And for me, when I would get my initiation, for example, by the second degree, I was like, I don't feel it. And it wasn't until I had that spiritual epiphany, that aha moment, that I didn't count that second degree. It's like, okay, I had the physical initiation 2 months ago, but just now or just tonight or over these last few days, I have felt that spiritual change, that spiritual evolution, that aha, that epiphany. That was the real initiation. Initiation is supposed to be, it's not about becoming a good coven member. It's not about becoming a good leader or priest or priestess. It's about your relationship with the natural forces of the universe, your relationship with your emotional body, your spiritual body, your mental body, your relationship with different planes of consciousness. I was very lucky because my teacher, my first shamanic teacher, told me, he said, a real shaman has one foot on every plane of consciousness simultaneously. That is the goal, having one foot on every plane of consciousness simultaneously. So I took that to heart because that was about the time I had just had my first degree initiation. So when I tell people the initiation is both physical and spiritual, that to me is what it is. Your goal is to be able to communicate with your higher self. Your goal is to be able to align with the natural forces, to align with the cycles of nature, of the stars and of the sun, and to have a relationship with life. Life, trees, cats, stars, gods, goddesses, the life forces. That to me is what initiation truly is. So when you do become a pagan, make sure you find a teacher that teaches you to be more than a book witch. I take issue with that. There's a lot of book witches that don't do the work, the inner work. So how do I become pagan? Again, it's a process. It's an unfolding process. It's getting to understand the dynamic between you and the goddess or the god or the gods, you and nature, you and the elements, earth, air, fire, and water, and perhaps maybe finding a way to connect with other people and build on that community. Again, it's different for everyone. I am an energy witch. I do great work with energy, with Reiki, with prana, altering my state of consciousness. I do great with tarot readings and things like that. But don't ask me what herbs to use to, heal that burn. Well, aloe. But you know what I'm saying? I'm not a kitchen witch. Some people are great kitchen witches. Some people are good book witches. Don't get me wrong. I think book witches are the parliamentarians of the pagan community. They know the history and whatnot, and that's all great to to keep that moving and being the oral traditional keepers, so to speak, and learning it and passing that on. There are all different types of witches, so there is no one way to become a pagan. All you have to do is officially, all you have to do is become a dedicant. Dedicate yourself to the path. Once you dedicate yourself to the path, you're basically considered a pagan. As a matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, the Gardnerians have, and I actually do it as well. I've done it for my friends' kids and whatnot, something called awakening. Yes, they did it on Charmed, but we were doing it way before Charmed. It's kind of just like a blessing, a blessing and an introduction to the gods, the goddesses, and to the elements, and to the spirits, and kind of just like letting them know, okay, they're going to be working with you now, so you can become a pagan that way if you'd like. So I've only got about 2 more minutes, so I'm not even going to go into something new. I've got so much more to share with you. We're going to go ahead and do this particular series for about 3 more weeks, and then intermittently throughout the rest of the year, and so forth. Who knows? Until I don't feel like doing this anymore. We'll be doing this again. But next week, I'm probably going to go. Actually, I don't want to tell you what I'm going to go into because Spirit might have another idea to guide me, and then I'd rather follow that. But let's just say we'll go into more depth. I'm sure we'll go more into understanding what ceremonial magic is, and high magic, and all that kind of stuff. All right, I love you all. Thank you so very much, and remember, please support this program at patreon.com/Bernard Alvarez. I will see you next week for part 2 of the Pagan, Magic, and the Occult series. I love you. Bye-bye.